International Fight Week is upon us, and the UFC has done their best to salvage a Conor McGregor fallout by bringing in Alex Pereira, looking to defend his title for the second time as he takes on Jiri Prochazka, a rematch of a fight that took place in November at MSG, and it is being put together on quite short notice here, but this was the matchup that the UFC wanted next for the light heavyweight division. Unfortunately for Prochazka, who I've heard did not want this date, they probably threw a bag at him to make it worth it, and now here they are throwing down this weekend. The UFC also called upon the services of Brian Ortega and Diego Lopes to try to save the card and add some star power to it, and that's a pretty damn good co-main event, especially considering we had Khalil Roundtree and Jamal Hill fall off during fight week. So just a quick reminder, this is the quick picks episode of the UFC 303 full card breakdown. If you guys are looking for more in-depth breakdowns for this card, I normally drop it on Mondays of fight week, so check the link in the description below for the full podcast where I go a full hour on the card. In this version of it, I try to get it all done within 10 minutes or so, getting straight to the point in terms of picking or letting you guys know why I picked a fighter, getting right to the point for you guys there. Reminder, PFL is going down Friday night as well. I have full card breakdown on the YouTube page for that, so make sure you guys check that out. And then I also will have ACA breakdowns on the Lock of the Night Patreon page. That goes down Friday morning, so if you're looking to get some early action in on that, that's where you guys are going to be able to find it. All right, hope you're laced up and ready to go, because we're off and running with the first fight of the night between Ricky Simón and Vinicius Oliveira. This should be a great fight between striker versus grappler, but I don't think that Oliveira is as good of a striker, or at least as technical of a striker, as the two opponents that Ricky Simón just came up short against. I think we'll see Simón utilize the recklessness of Oliveira against him, look to take him to the ground, smother him from that top position, possibly pulling off a submission, but ultimately for the sake of this podcast, I'm going to say Simón by decision. Next up, Tsuruya going up against Carlos Hernandez. Tsuruya is a part of the new wave of Japanese talent coming over to the UFC. We just saw Tatsuro Taira pick up a main event victory a couple weeks back. We also have Rinya Nakamura on the rise, and now Tsuruya makes his UFC debut in front of a sold-out crowd, and I think he has all the chops to put Carlos Hernandez through the ringer and win this fight on the scorecards. Next up, Andre Arlovski going up against Martin Buday, veteran versus prospect here, and Buday did get stopped by Shamil Gadziev last time around, but I expected a pissed-off version of him coming into this matchup, and I think his ability to pressure and put Arlovski into uncomfortable positions will cause Arlovski a lot of troubles. I really hope Buday looks to take this fight to the ground, because from there, Arlovski pretty much gives up and does not offer up much resistance there, and I think Buday could submit him pretty easily here, maybe even taking a shot on that prop. Next up, Michelle Waterson-Gomez going up against Jillian Robertson. Tough times for the karate hottie, as she is really struggling 1-6 in her last 7 fights, and I think it's going to go to 1-7 as she comes up short against Jillian Robertson. Look for Robertson to utilize her relentless grappling approach to take Waterson-Gomez to the ground and eventually find a submission. It might be hard early, but Robertson is a fighter that will not give up on her takedown attempts, and I think eventually she should be able to drag this fight to the ground and find that submission. Next up, ultra prospect here in Peyton Talbott taking on Yanis Ghemmouri. We know exactly what the UFC is doing here by putting Talbott on a card that was originally headlined by Conor McGregor. We know that they want more eyeballs on him and him getting the opportunity to potentially put together more highlight reel finishes, and that's exactly the type of opponent that he's getting this weekend. Ghemmouri needs to find a new manager because they keep accepting and putting him in fights where he is extremely outmatched, and this will be no different. Look for Talbott to find a knockout victory within 2 rounds. Next up, Charles Jourdain going up against Gene Silva, and what could go down as the fight of the night. Flashy strikers, unorthodox approaches, but both guys usually like to look for the knockout and get their opponents out of there. I do think Silva is the slightly better fighter in terms of being a little bit more physical, a little bit faster, and more powerful, and I think that could end up being the difference maker here, as both guys will be looking to chip away at each other, but I think Silva will be the one to land the big shot and eventually find a finish. Next up, Cub Swanson going up against Andre Fili, a fight that will likely play out closer than the odds suggest, but I still believe that Fili has the youth advantage here, and I think he has the overall MMA advantage at this stage of his career to put together a good enough body of work to win this fight on the scorecards. The over 2.5, not a bad look either. Next up, Joe Pyfer going up against Marc-Andre Barriault. Everybody's still on the Joe Pyfer train after he fumbled a bag against Jack Hermanson earlier this year as a big favorite. Finds himself as a big favorite once again against the veteran Barriault here. And I do think we'll see Pyfer eventually land that big shot to put Barriault out, but I can't justify laying the chalk on him once again, although you could get his KO prop at plus 200. And then on the flip side for Barriault, you can get him to win by decision at plus 700. Probably playing either of those will end up in some profit, but the official prediction will be Joe Pyfer by knockout. Next up, Ian Machado Garry going up against Michael Venom Page. Machado Garry is now 7-0 since joining the promotion, and I think he increases that to 8-0 this weekend as he showcases a different wrinkle to his game that many viewers may not know he has. Since being in the UFC, he has largely showcased a striking heavy approach, but if you look back to his Cage Warriors days, he does have the ability to grind opponents out and dominate them on the mat, and I believe him spending the last few camps down there at the Diego Lima Shooter Box camp alongside Charles Oliveira may have added some submissions to his arsenal as well. Look for Machado Garry to grind out Michael Page and win this fight, likely by submission. Next up, Mayra Bueno Silva goes up against Macy Chiasson. Silva coming up short in her path to the title last time around in January as Raquel Pennington defeated her on all three scorecards over 5 rounds. Macy Chiasson will likely make it 2-0 in terms of losses for Silva, as Chiasson should be the bigger and more physical fighter here, and she's really starting to hone it in with her jiu-jitsu and ability to control opponents and find submissions. I don't think she'll find the submission here against Silva, but I think we'll see her use her size to bully her opponents as she's done in the past, and then eventually start cruising in deep waters and end up winning this fight on the scorecards. Next up, Anthony Smith going up against Roman Dolidze. This fight was put together on very short notice to try to add a little bit more star power to the card. Obviously, Anthony Smith was originally scheduled to fight Carlos Ulberg. Carlos Ulberg was originally scheduled to fight Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill was originally scheduled to fight Khalil Roundtree. So this fight has gone through a ton of changes. But I do believe Roman Dolidze, normally a middleweight, has the aggressiveness and power to put Anthony Smith away, or at least make it a really rough night for him by using his aggressiveness and pushing the pace here. Again, both these guys coming in on short notice. Dolidze was also in Georgia. We know that he normally likes to prepare for matchups down there at Extreme Couture, so that could play into this matchup a little bit. I would pass all around considering the short notice nature of it for both guys, but I do think Dolidze is the better fighter here, at least better guy to bring the fight to Smith and possibly break him. I'm going to go Dolidze and Dolidze inside the distance. Next up, Brian Ortega going up against Diego Lopes. Ortega and Lopes taking this fight on short notice. Both guys very dangerous jiu-jitsu players, but I do have to give the slight edge to Diego Lopes in the striking realm. I think we've seen him really harness that power and that ability to pressure his opponents, which has allowed him to go out there and finish 3 straight opponents within a minute and a half. And I think Ortega, he will always suffer for being a somewhat bad striker, but once he gets fights to the ground, he is very, very dangerous, and that could present some issues for Lopes. But we know Lopes is a high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt himself, and I think it will see him utilize his grappling defensively or to keep this fight upright, where he could eventually go out there, outstrike, and possibly even finish Ortega on the feet. Very close fight. I don't like picking prospects like this over veterans like Ortega, but considering how they match up, I do have to go with Lopes and Lopes inside the distance. And that brings us to the main event between Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka, rematching after they went to war back in November, and Pereira came out on top with a second-round knockout victory. And this is a very close fight that could absolutely go either way. I'm seeing a little bit of love on Prochazka come in to bring that line down a little bit, but I still have to lean with the guy that I believe is a little bit more technical and a little bit more disciplined. And I think we'll see Pereira's leg kick start to catch up with Prochazka once again and eventually open up an ability to land that check left hook, that lead left hook that Pereira loves to throw, and I think he'll find the button once again against Prochazka. Very, very close fight, but I have to lean Pereira to win this fight and still defending his title for the second time, Alex Poatan Pereira. There you guys go. Quick picks for UFC 303. Again, full card breakdown dropped on Monday, so make sure you guys check that out. If you want more explanation as to why I'm picking the fighters that I picked on this card. PFL also going down Friday night. Got the full card breakdown for you guys there. And then also ACA going down Friday morning. I got you guys covered there as well. All right, I'll see you guys tomorrow for the free parlay Locky two-step Locky Trinity video, as well as the 3 best prop bets for UFC 303. See you guys then. Peace.